stand and our community affirmation. Now, I ask each of you as we do this, this is subtle and it's not so subtle. This is your opportunity to join your voice in saying the truth. So let's bring our voices together and say together, I agree to love and serve the world. When those around me prosper and are happy, so am I. I pour my love into the world through service, and so it is. And remain standing for our congregational song, please.
Excellent singing. Welcome to anyone this morning on the live stream, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. You are part of this spiritual community, and we welcome you today as we welcome everyone else here today. I want to say good morning again to all of you. Good morning, yes. Once again, the series for this month is about service in all its myriad forms. And as Stephen said, it is about service to your family today. Always remembering, as I say on Sunday over and over again, that the only legacy that we leave our family and our world is our happiness. You know, nothing else really matters in the long term. The following quote came across my desk this week, and I have no clue who said it. It's one of those things, again, where I tried to look up and see who said it. It's anonymous, I guess. A bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking, because her trust is not on the branch, but on her own wings. Always believe in yourself. Oh, there you go. Is that your quote, Paulette? There you go. And from T.D. Jakes, the book that I'm currently reading, it was gifted to me a couple of weeks ago by my friend Shirley. His new book is called Instincts. If you don't know who he is, he's an evangelical minister. He's African American, and he's very loud and boisterous. And he's wonderful to watch. He's just wonderful to watch. He said, once we've overcome some of our fears and left the cage or the nest, we must keep flying. Once we've conquered certain limitations, we never stop. The dreams may get bigger, the challenges more daunting, the opportunities more thrilling, but our journey in the wild of life never ends. So what has this got to do with being in service to our family? And it might be a little bit obscure at the outset, but kind of bear with me if you wouldn't mind. When I think of those folks who left the comfort of their home and hearth to travel westward in the covered wagons all those years ago to come to California, they were definitely in service to their families. They were looking for a different and more exciting experience of life, or maybe even just a better experience of life is what they were looking for. And if you've ever traveled up through the Salinas Valley in the springtime, which we used to do every year when we went to Asilomar, and I would cut across at Spreckles Road. I would cut across at Spreckles Road, and everything is just so lush and green, and the dirt smells so wonderful, and it was just always just so incredible. And I can imagine what those people must have felt when they came over the mountains and down into the valley after leaving the Dust Bowls of Oklahoma or the concrete jungles of New York City. And when I think of those people whose inventions changed the course of history for all of us, they were in service to their families in grand and glorious ways. Yes, the challenges were daunting for some of those people who traveled to California, but once mastered and they moved on to bigger and better things, just in the same way that those inventors moved on to bigger and better inventions. They were setting the stage for something wonderful to happen. And I think as parents, we understand that our design for living is very different than the design for living that our parents had. Each generation changes something and makes it better for the next generation. When my parents decided to emigrate to the United States in 1961, it was out of necessity. We arrived in California between Christmas and New Year's Day, coming to Vallejo, where my dad's brother had already moved some years before. And we had come from a very harsh winter. Where I lived in Canada was right in the middle of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And we'd had 19 feet of snow that winter. So to come to sunshine and temperatures in the mid-60s, we thought we'd reached a form of heaven, as you can imagine. And my dad had been sick every year for the last 5 years. And they diagnosed him as having pneumonia every winter. As it turns out, many years later, we found out that his blood would get so thick during the wintertime that he would form clots, and they would fill his lungs up. And he was literally suffocating. It wasn't pneumonia at all. And until he was in the hospital for pneumonia, actually in Santa Rosa, and he had phlebitis, and they gave him a blood thinner, and it was a miracle. But they didn't equate the blood thinner with the blood clots. Anyway, that's another whole other story. But we had New Year's Day dinner that year out on my uncle's patio, and we were in awe of the difference in where we'd been and where we were. I mean, it was almost like a dream to my younger brother and sister, of course, and my older sister and myself. My parents' decision to move to California changed the trajectory of our lives, of all of my siblings' lives, because it changed the way our family had done things for so many years. My dad had 14 brothers and sisters, and only 3 of them left the fold. Can you imagine? I mean, if all your children stayed at home? Seriously, the rest of them, that's a scary thing, don't you think? The rest of them stayed within 20 miles of the original farm where they were raised in Saskatchewan. And they looked upon my dad and his 2 brothers who left and came to California as quote unquote different, because they chose to branch out. And for most of us here today, we have also branched out by embracing a religion and philosophy that may be very, very different than what we grew up with. Being in service to my family means that I have chosen a powerful philosophy with which to change my own life, and in the process, change the lives of my children and my 1 grandchild so far, but my grandchildren. And for all of us here, that's probably true. My decision to leave the structured confines of Catholicism to come to religious science came as a result of years of seeking. I looked everywhere. I studied Buddhism. I studied Judaism, self-help. I was in a 12-step program, and I'm still a 12-stepper, and even dabbled in the darkness of Satanism. But then that was the 60s, so that's kind of, you know where, where I was going with that one. It wasn't as popular as you'd think. Very interesting. But all of those were shallow digs, shallow. Though much like digging for oil, I found the science of mind. I knew that, all those little shallow digs meant nothing. But when I found the science of mind, I hit the mother lode. I absolutely hit the mother lode. And I knew that this would serve my family well, very well, because there was nothing incongruent about Ernest Holmes and his philosophical approach to life. In the science of mind, I learned that the integrity of the universe cannot be questioned or doubted, and that God, the God of my new understanding, must be and is perfect, as Ernest Holmes says. I also learned and have passed on to my children that when we're out of harmony with some special good, as Ernest Holmes calls it, it is because we are off the track along that particular line, and the activity of spirit appears to be absent. Appears is the operative word, because not true. We are the ones who are absent, because spirit is always and forever. Our awareness of it may be clouded or may be set aside for the time being. And while we can never really be out of principle, as some are so fond of saying in an admonishing way, you're out of principle, we are always in principle at the level of our own consciousness. We are. We're doing the best we can with what we have at our disposal. And a change in consciousness, however, does not come by simply willing or wishing. And it can be difficult to hold our mental attention to an ideal when we see the discordance of what's going on in our world. But it can be done. It really can be done. We are in service to our family when we know the truth in spite of appearances to the contrary, such as the bombing of the Malaysian airline last week and what's happening in Israel and Palestine. As a gradual unfoldment of our inner self, we leave a legacy for our children and our grandchildren. That's how we are in service to our family, where they then are able to see the truth too, that God is all there is, even in the midst of what appears not to be true. Ernest says that if we wish to come to Spirit for our own healing, we have to come in peace and spontaneous joy. And when we do this on a consistent and confident basis, our families will see this and be encouraged. Friday, I went to have my nails done the most important kind of things. And it's normally just the manicurist and me. But this time there was another stylist using sharing Valerie's space, and over the span of about 90 minutes or so, she had 3 customers. The negativity was almost too much for me to bear. And after the second client left, I just had to interject when the third client went on the thing, and it was the same conversation. The hairstylist was having the same conversation with all 3 of the clients. And it got more heated as the client progressed. I guess it depended on the personality of who she was talking. But, when I interjected, it fell like a lead balloon. I offered an explanation different than their bashing an entire nation and people. And I thought, could you entertain the possibility of looking at this just a little bit differently? They stopped momentarily. They listened to what I said, but resumed their diatribe when I was finished in exactly the same way as they had begun had started in the beginning. It was a terrific example of casting one's pearls before swine. I don't think that in a 2-minute period I was going to change their minds, but I totally understand what they talked about in the Bible. Now, I get it completely. Ernest, it totally fell on deaf ears. It totally fell on, they wanted to be in their moment. Ernest says that most people are unhappy and few have the realization of permanent peace. He said the universe is perfect, undivided whole, and healing can take place only when one is unified with it. Can anyone be healed in part? What an interesting question. Can anyone actually be healed in part? So I had to think about that right now. And I thought the divisiveness of the world right now is indicative of the divisiveness with many individuals. And our job as good religious scientists is to encourage the individuals, maybe in our family of origins, in our extended spiritual families, to see things differently, to have a different conversation about what is going on from the perspective of the observer. And if we look at our teaching from the 4 kingdoms of consciousness, because that's the process that is used in the co-creation process in Living Your Life's Purpose that I took up in Oregon a few weeks back, the conversations like the one in the shop on Friday are clearly a first kingdom consciousness. They are whatever is happening, they are doing it to us. That's someone is trying to hurt me consciousness. That is I am the victim here consciousness. That's the first kingdom. When we move into the second kingdom, we are dealing with life from cause and effect perspective. And while this is a better approach because we're becoming more aware, it still does not solve the problem at the thinking or consciousness level. When we move into the third kingdom, we begin to become a greater part of the solution. And we begin to see and appreciate our world from a level of observation. I can see that there are some areas in my life and in the world that need to be healed. And as the observer of the needed healing, I can be truthfully objective. Now, like in the beauty shop, it might fall on deaf ears. But you know what? If there's just one person that I talk to that has a change in thought process about the way things look in life, then I've done my job as a religious scientist. You think that those women who didn't listen to me in the beauty parlor are going to stop me from talking? You betcha? Nope, 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 it won't. If I don't get down and dirty with the judgment and condemnation, if I do not get down and dirty with the judgment and condemnation, but I can have as much compassion for the bomber as the ones bombed, there is truly healing affected. Now, Ernest Holmes talks about that in The Science of Mind. The idea is that we don't know everything that actually happened. We don't know if it was a mistake. You know, a few years ago, if you will recall, the United States shot down an airplane by accident. So maybe this was another one of those instances. We don't have enough information to make an intelligent observation, if you will. Fourth kingdom consciousness, of course, is that elusive ideal where it is all God, it's all good. And when I have those moments of cosmic consciousness, it is exhilarating beyond measure. But I still live in the world. Yesterday, Don Miguel Jr. was here. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. was here. And to me, he was brilliant because he was talking to me about what I needed to hear. It was just an amazing thing. And he was talking yesterday, and this is just such a little snippet of what he shared, but he was talking about the dream of us. The dream of us. And I got so attached to that yesterday. I came home after last night, and I sat down and I read his one of his first books. One of the first book that he wrote, I think, is The 5 Levels of Attachment. If you have not read this book, I encourage you to go downstairs to the bookstore and pick this up. You will see yourself coming and going in this. He also has this book, Living the Life of Awareness, which is a newer book, and they're daily meditations from the Toltec, which is wonderful. And then on July, he has a deadline for a new book on July 31st, so there'll be another one coming out. And what was interesting about this, he's 38 years old. He's 38 years old. He's got 2 books. He's a national speaker. And he's 1 year older than my daughter. And I thought to myself, whoa, my daughter writes a blog about cars on Facebook. He's writing books that are life-changing for people. Now, if you're into cars, maybe my daughter's blog is life-changing for you. But do you get how things are just so incongruent sometimes? To me, he was wonderful. But the dream of us that he was talking about yesterday is that you wonder why we do hugs and handshakes on Sunday morning? He said that until you connect with one another at some intrinsic level, that means we have to touch each other. We have to be able to. He did this thing where he had this person in the audience touch the tip of his finger like this. And he said, the dream of us is complete. I am attached to you. There's not just me and you, there's us in this touching. And why we do hugs and handshakes on Sunday morning is a wonderful, wonderful way for us to unify with one another. Instead of all this talk of separation and this discordant stuff that seems to be going on. Ernest said the conscious unity and this perception is always an inner light, as Don Miguel said yesterday, for we can use only such knowledge as we inwardly possess. He also says, Ernest Holmes also says that the most intimate level that we have with another being is conversation. That if I can have a conversation with you and I can have a conversation with you, then I have communicated at the most intimate level there is. Because I work on myself daily, I know that I am in service to my family by way of my own evolved consciousness. It's not about giving them stuff and things. God knows they're going to get all that when I croak. But right now, the greatest gift I give them is my own evolution and truth and my own self-discovery. We really do lead by example, don't we? And again, I ask the question, and I ask this a lot to the religious scientists in our classes. If we were arrested for being a religious scientist, would there be enough evidence to convict us? You know, that's a big question. Do we live this teaching only on Sunday or in class, or are we practicing religious scientists on a daily basis? Do we bring the gift of our self-discovery to our children and our grandchildren as our gift to the world? That's being in service to our families. 10 ways to be in service to one's family, and these are all Bible quotes. And if anybody wants to know where to find them in the Bible, just let me know and I'll send you a copy of them. But the first one is listen without interrupting. That comes from Proverbs. Speak without accusing. That's from James. The third one, give without sparing. That's from Proverbs. Pray without ceasing, from Colossians. The fifth one, answer without arguing. Okay. The sixth one, share without pretending. 7, enjoy without complaint. That's from Philippians. 8, trust without wavering, from Corinthians. 9, forgive without punishing, and that's from Colossians. And 10, promise without forgetting. That's from Proverbs. So if we follow these promptings from the Bible and we connect on an in-depth level with our children and our grandchildren by sharing with them the experience of our truth and our self-discovery, we will be in service to our families unerringly, knowing that with God, all things are possible. Will you join me in? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Will you join me in consciousness, please? So going within today and always to that perfect place of peace, I recognize that being a religious scientist comes with it a tremendous amount of responsibility. And as I speak this truth in the first person for all here present today, I know that responsibility extends to the members of this congregation, to the honored guests here today, and to everyone in our circle of influence. Because as I have been affected by my awareness of the power and presence of Spirit in my life, then I have the opportunity then to affect change in the lives of those in my family and those in my extended spiritual family. And I know that we truly are the world. We are the world. As I recognize my own vulnerability in choosing this philosophy for my life experience, I know that as I grow in consciousness and as I move through the 4 kingdoms of consciousness, I know I go from victim to cosmic consciousness on a daily basis and everything in between. But today I know for each one of us that as we surrender to a greater idea, a greater possibility for our own lives and the lives of everyone in our circle, we do so from that awareness that God is all there is, that there is a power and presence at work in my life, and I can use it. And that power and presence is available to all of us. And so today, I step back from my judgments. I step back from my thoughts of harm or negativity about and toward anyone or anything. And I know that as I stay in this consciousness of wholeness, that as I stay in this consciousness of belief in the inherent good of people of all nations, all cultures, all ethnic backgrounds, and all origins, I know that I can see the possibility of peace not only in my own life, but peace on earth. And so today, I see myself coming and going in all the conversations. I see those parts of me that want to be in doubt and fear. And I see those parts of me that also are in confidence and love for the possibility that there is a solution and there is a way. Because I know that the God of my understanding would never, ever create a problem without a solution already in place. And so today, from that place in my heart and in my soul, I know that there is good and very good about to be revealed. And that as we join in consciousness as religious scientists to see the best of everything, I know that this too is for good. This too is for God. And I know there's a blessing in it. As I release my word to the activity of the law, I know that that creative law takes my word and puts it into effect in my life. God is in the mix, and all is well, as we say together, and so it is.